every artist expressed that I spoke to, that this love of visual problem solving, you know, trying to find an interesting way to say something that's otherwise very complicated.
Yeah, and it's not easy because all the good ideas have been taken by all the good people. Milton Glaser, Seymour Kloss, these guys, you know, the Pushman Studio guys, they pretty much snapped up almost every good idea there ever was. So for us, I'm like a decade later, it's hard to come up with good ideas. And I think part of what makes my work is I come up with a good idea, but I also add those little, I don't know if they're anything here, but little critters peeking around corners. I guess none of these have them, but I most often have a little rabbit peeking over a hill, or a cat next to the person, you know, with a little dangler falling off and looking either very frightened or very amused, depending on whether it's a safe environment or unsafe. And most of my environments, I think, are unsafe. It's an unsafe world. Let's see if I have it here. Did I toss anything here? No. I guess when I do things I do with health issues, you know, animals are contaminated with disease. I keep them out so that everybody stays healthy. So if anybody has any questions or any answers, I'll take either one.
Have you always worked this small? Because I know a lot of illustrators work larger because they can, you know, the image comes down in size for print and gets a little more concentrated.
You know what, I used to work a bit larger, but it's real dependent on the pen. I use a Pelican 120 fountain pen, and when I finally the nib wears out, and when I put a new nib in, I have been working with a new nib now, it stays sharp for a long time, and as long as it is, if I work larger, I lose that. If you look closely, you can see how the line comes, and I can press. With the nib becomes flexible, and I can do the top of the nose is a skip across the paper, and then I lean underneath. It becomes heavier underneath. It adds volume. So I really often now do, if I do a full. Well, you saw that pencil that I was passing around, the one that's in the show, and it would be interesting to see the printed piece. But very often I work. Smaller, and then Maggie shoots a high res and blows it up to the size they want. So right. I may work about 5 inches across on something that's going to end up being 8. And it works fine. It adds a little bit more graphic quality to the line. So, yeah, I can't, I mean, this is pretty complex, but I have a feeling this was reproduced larger. We didn't have a tear sheet.
You know, it was, because I did see it on the printed page.
Oh, did you?
The double page spread, and it was
went much
larger.
wider, yeah. But,
would you like these?
oh, yeah, well, yeah, this, you can even see right there, here's the width of this. See, this is, my sketch, actually, my graphite pencil rendering, I reduced a bit because I knew that my pen line would work better than it would this size. And then this was blown up again. This may actually be the actual size it was printed, I'm not sure.
I love all the little flying bits that they lend such a sense of activity, a little bit of freneticism.
I think I sometimes overdo that. I put too many of those in there, but there is something about the stuff that falls off us. You know that stuff. We got these, you know those mites that are in all our eyes. You know, we go like this, like that. That's filled with zillions of these things, and when they're blown up with these microscope things, they look like a monster from outer space. And I have a monster from outer space in my mouth. So I think this stuff falling off is homage to all the things that live on us. We hope mostly harmoniously.
Yeah, it's the things that are radiating some kind of vibrations.
I think I started that coming out of lamps one time. I just added that to the top of lamps to show light, because I never learned watercolor properly. You know, like Well, Peter DeSev is a good example, Ed Sorrell. These people can do these beautiful water, they really know how to use watercolor as a watercolor, whereas I just lay in flat washes. So I think there was a scene years ago and I had a lamp and I wanted to light another lamp, but I didn't know how to have it glow out. I mean, I didn't know how to do watercolor that way. So I decided if I just drew a line up like that, the light would just beam off into, bleed off. So I can find it, I thought, well, it can kind of jag out in a way. And then that thing, it took over my life. So anything I want to show it that it's working electronically or glowing or it's light, anything that's emitting something, I have those little things on the top and I can't control myself. They're just there. And
Yeah, robots are very nice like that.
that's an older piece. I still got it there. See, on this one, I colored in the whole yellow on the top of that one, but on this one, now I color in just around the edge of it. And I either do yellow if it's, well, mostly if it's electronic, it's blue, because electronic is more blue, whereas light is more yellow. You know how that goes. But on this, I made it yellow because I had a blue or a greenish background. So I bend the rules. But there are rules.
It's interesting to look at some of the subjects that you were dealing with because these tended to be recurring in a lot of the material that I was looking at. Obviously, healthy eating versus unhealthy eating came up over and over again. Issues around trying to understand your doctor's diagnosis, which can often be so complex and put to you in language that you can barely understand. Like, this is hilarious. The terms that you have in there, I looked them up. They actually have to do with DNA and cellular structure. So it's so clever, that this doctor is just reading off all this information.
Yeah, and I probably just took it from the text, I have no knowledge of that. I just, use them. Yeah.
The patient is just dumbfounded and has no way to interpret or understand what he's being told.
Something that's interesting too is this set of little icons and things that artists use, like political cartoonists, they use the donkey, and they have various language. Uncle Sam is a famous one. But those little things, I actually look at pictures of them. They don't look like that at all. They come around and they have a thing that you slide down like this and you slide it back up. So it doesn't look like that, but I've been drawing it so long like that I can't change it. Plus it reads faster. I mean, this thing doesn't do anything. It's like a headlamp. But the thing is, doctors hardly ever wear those anymore.
I've never seen one on, but
I've never seen
it
one.
does signal immediately to the audience.
Yeah, it says doctor. So some things changed. Like the stock market used to be a ticker, one of those things with the tapes coming out.
Right.
It was a dome, usually like glass. You could see little gears in there or something. So I love those. Well, now nobody uses those, so you had to abandon it. And then you think,
Sounds like nursing uniforms.
Right.
Yeah, what am I going to do? I mean, you could have a chart with a thing like that. That's kind of but you have to find
The new icon.
the new icon to make it work. And
That's true. Remember, nurses used to wear those little hats?
Yes,
had white
and
dresses.
everybody
Yeah,
recognized
long
that.
gone.
Sure.
Yeah.
That's long gone.
yeah, I guess do they still wear them sometimes?
No.
The little hats. No.
I still
there
draw.
are a few hospitals. There are a few hospitals where some do, but
They
know,
had
all
signify
scrubs.
the nursing school that they were from.
Did
Yeah.
it? Oh.
Yeah, I learned that from my Cherry Ames game when I was a child, but that is dating me. That's a long time
I just
ago.
found out from a New Yorker cartoonist, we have several living in Rhinebeck, that there's an edict now that no hats. Men don't wear hats anymore. Skip it with the fedora. They didn't stop drawing fedoras. And I thought, I'm glad no one's telling me that because I don't know if any of these characters have hats. But I love hats like yours. And when they fly off, whoa, So and that one that is that one I did? Well, one I just did have hats. Probably these won't because they're, yeah. Well, anyway, I love drawing hats, and it's kind of a shame that just because some people aren't wearing hats anymore, that you can't draw people with hats. It's another world. See, here's another doctor thing, you know, one of those.
The big stethoscope?
I looked one up the other day to see what they look like, and they actually don't really look like that. But I keep drawing, I've tried to change it. Sometimes I'll look at real things and I'll say, I gotta make it look more like that.
I was happy to see that you have one lady doctor and that image
Yeah.
there. That was something Rockwell didn't have to consider.
Well, Sharon, that is an important point because, you know, the work today has to look at diversity. And obviously audiences are really seeking to see themselves in the images that are produced. So that, you know, for a lot of artists, depending upon the publication and the article.
Did that come into
Comes into
consideration when you were choosing your images in any way?
It did, actually. You know, when we were speaking with Pfizer, they had done some market survey of the physicians that they deal with. And in fact, they found that many of the physicians, especially those who were multicultural, coming to this country from other places and working, felt that they were not necessarily reflected, obviously, in the images that Rockwell had painted so many, you know, decades ago. So, you know, it was definitely something that, you know, in terms of updating, we wanted to look at a little bit.
Yeah, in children's books, I've been doing more and more children's books, illustrations for them, and that's a real consideration,
Yeah.
which is partly one of the reasons I like doing, particularly like doing ones that have all animals, because then I don't have to worry so much about that, because there is a thing that you can make someone, you can offend someone with the way you draw them. You know, it can be a stereotype, and yet you have to, I mean, generally speaking, like on this one, this man here, these colors are sort of on the light side, but when Maggie scans them, she enriches everything, so I don't worry so much about whether I get a certain density. But this is a man of color. It's more of a brown tone, but I don't really draw realistically in any way, so the kinds of features that might depict a black man or an Asian isn't something that I worry very much about. I mean, I don't do much about that except add a little tone, or I might do you know, tighter, wiry type hair on someone. But it's something that is considered, and whenever I do a thing that has a group of people, I try to make sure I include somewhat of a little bit of a racial balance, at least someone of color, and as you say, you know, put a female in because they're female doctors, you know. And although my favorite character to draw is someone more like this. I love fat little bald men. It's what I prefer to draw. It's like kind of round, little pickers, I call them, little hairs sticking out. I think as I have curly hair, I've never been very fond of curly hair. I'm not looking looking forward to the day I get totally bald with little pickers sticking out of my head, but at least I'll be at one with my characters finally.
I think the most characteristic thing is with your work is that all your characters seem to be so anxious.
Yeah, me too. I was saying to someone earlier that my nature, I'm an apprehensive person. I worry about things, and well, maybe was I talking to you? But anyway, I might be repeating myself. But I am repeating myself, but to the group, when my wife and I go for walks, we live in a small town, but we'll go in a more rural area and do a walk. And I'm always concerned about if it's a high wind, the branches falling. They call them widowmakers, I'll say. You know, and there's a reason for that, because they can fall and crush your skull. And so I'm apprehensive about all the things that could cause harm. And I have a fear of flying, although I fly, usually after numerous pints of beer. But I'm kind of a worrywart, and I'm worried about all these things. And my characters obviously are pretty much the same. I mean, you hardly ever see I draw a hero type super person sometimes if need be, but that person is pretty much the kind of character that I have an affinity for. It's kind of my nature. And I think even all that stuff falling off them, you know, aside from being little growths on us, little things crawling on us, it's also part of that energy level of if something can go wrong, it will, or whatever that is. And it does all the time. I mean, it's quite horrifying out there. But I also can laugh hard, and life is, you know, I think I see the glass slightly half empty, but it doesn't mean I don't enjoy life. I do. I enjoy it more than death, as far as I know.